we have Victor Eduoh here to give us a masterclass on product-led storytelling. First, a bit about Victor. Victor has two obsessions: strategizing and crafting content people actually want to read and share with peers, and driving business outcomes. It is really about that Goldilocks intersection. Victor coined the term product-led storytelling and designed the frameworks to execute it successfully. He has been leveraging these methods to drive success for many B2B softwares as a service with his work at VEC Studio. With that, Victor, I'll pass the mic to you and take it away.
Okay, thank you so much for that warm introduction, Bernard. I'm just going to jump straight to it. Please drop in the chat where you're joining us from so that we'll know that I'm talking to people out here. And thank you for why you do that. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about product-led storytelling, how to make the most of SEO. And to really conceptualize what I want to talk about today, I'm going to talk about how to minimize Pogo-sticking with well-crafted, story-driven content that converts. Of course, as I go on, you're going to see what I mean by Pogo-sticking, where product-led storytelling comes in, and how solving the problem of Pogo-sticking helps you make the most of SEO. So we are going to cover, this is what we are going to cover today. You will learn how to use ideal customer profile relatable storytelling to craft content your target ICPs actually wants to read. You learn how to weave in your brand and product into that content to show and not just tell them how your product solves the problem the content is addressing. Yeah, you will learn how to persuade and convert engaged readers into prospects or fans. The thing here is that not everybody is going to engage with your content, but the few people who engage, probably 70 or 80% of the content, they are only going to do that because they love the content or they love what the content is talking about. Those are the people that are most primed to be converted. So we'll talk about how you convert with product-led storytelling. A little bit about me. I think Bernard has already done the honors, but I'm the founder of Vex Studio. I coined product-led storytelling. I've been a mentor, a content strategy mentor at GrowthMentor for a couple of years now. And then I'm the strategic advisor to Code Studio. Of course, they made my slides. So let's jump straight to it. First, what's the problem? The problem is that most such experiences end in frustration. And for many of us on this call today, I think you'll be able to relate because in one way or another, you must have encountered this. But to bring the point home, let's imagine a busy marketing manager. Let's call her Sarah, for instance. She goes to the SAP to search for something. And sometimes, most times, this is what happens. Let me come back here. You can see her going from one search result to the other, going from one search result to the other in frustration because she doesn't find what she wants. So what really happens there? First thing that happens is that, so let's assume she's searching for how to improve email open rates. She types that into Google, she sees the first content page, she opens it and the content lacks resonance. By resonance, I mean that she clicks on the content, she clicks on the content, but the content is generic. It's not tailored to her own, like to who she is as, for instance, a marketing manager. So what does she do? She goes back to the SAP results, clicks on the second result on the SAPs, and then hopefully she's hoping that she can get something that is more important. Maybe this one, maybe the second one resonates with her, but is not relevant. So the content is informative, but it doesn't address the problem that she wants to solve. So again, it's not relevant. Most times, the third one is that she goes back to the SAP and she finds another article. This one, maybe it resonates with her, it's relevant, but it lacks depth. So it doesn't offer actionable insights that she can apply today. It doesn't give her a compelling reason why she should take action. And this is important because if you've worked so hard to rank your content on the SAP, which is no mean feat, you want to ensure that you are not, those content pieces do not have any of these problems. If it doesn't resonate with somebody, it's not relevant and it lacks depth. People are not going to do anything. And that is what is called Pogo-sticking. So what I've just explained is illustrated on this SAP. Pogo-sticking is a concept I learned from Brian Fishkin, one of his very old articles for Moz. And in that Whiteboard Friday, he talked about how most of the problem with search content is the problem of Pogo-sticking. And that's the scenario where you go to the SAP, you don't see what you want, you keep going back and you get frustrated, and then you leave the SAPs. So understanding Pogo-sticking is the first place to understanding how product-led storytelling makes SEO better. So the solution to this is to use ideal customer relatable storytelling to craft content that your audience actually wants to read. Because if you look at the problem that brought us to this solution we are trying to profile, you notice that Sarah, for instance, not reading that content piece and she kept clicking back to the SAPs is because she didn't find the content relevant to her. Like, she couldn't read it because for whatever reason, it either didn't resonate with her, or it wasn't resonant, or it wasn't relevant to the problem she was trying to solve. So how you solve this is that you craft content that attracts your target ICP. So if she comes across your content, like from the title to the introduction, it should hook her. From the middle of the content, it should be so relevant that she sees that, oh, this is actually solving the problems I want to solve. And then lastly, it should have depth and give her a compelling reason to want to do something that you maybe take an action for your business, book a sales demo, start a free trial, whatever the case may be. So how do you do that? As I said, you create ICP story scripts, and then you use that your ICP story scripts and execute with product-led storytelling. Now, please, I'm keeping this very short because so many things goes into this, but I'm summarizing so that you can leave with this webinar with actionable points that you can apply to your own content program. So what are ICP story scripts to start with? So ICP story scripts is a framework we designed in Vex Studio that combines buyer personas and job to be done theories to nail the who, what, and why of your target buyers. So you use ICP story scripts to develop scripts for anchoring the stories in your content. So it resonates with readers, addresses their problems, and compels readership. Like, I would die on the hill that if people don't read your content, nothing else matters. Because it's when people read your content, they can buy into your point of view. It's when they read your content, they can get to see how your product uniquely solves their problem. So the biggest hurdle of SEO, besides getting the content to rank, is getting your target ICPs to read your content. And that's what the whole concept of product-led storytelling. So as you can see here, before now, even in our own studio, we used to have a situation where we create content using buyer personas. And you know that most times they just focus on demographics and all that. When we switched to jobs to be done doesn't do so much like talking about who the target buyer is. But for content to resonate, be relevant, and compel action, like we've just seen in the case of Sarah, it needs to resonate with who she is. It needs to address what problem they want to solve. And it needs to state clearly why they should take action, why they should do something. And so that's what product-led storytelling help you do. So how do you create them? As I said, a lot of things goes into it, but to give you a summary, let's stick with Sarah, for instance. Let's say you have a product or a service that sells to different target audiences, and marketing managers like Sarah is one of them. As you can see here, what ICP story scripts wants you to do is take a sample of your customer, or of your customer base, let's say marketing managers. Then drill deep into that sample to find your fans and like loyal followers would be like people who may never use your product, but they love your brand. Your secondary product users will probably be people who maybe they are not the ones that make the buying decisions and all that. Then your product champions and your happiest customers are the people who use your product. They will advocate for your brand and all that. So ICP StoryScripts is like taking a sample of those your happiest customers, those people who they possibly can't imagine their life without their product, because at the end of the day, you want to attract more of those people to your business, because the more of those people you attract to your business, the more it's likely that you can retain them longer. So once you've done that, once you've taken a sample of your core customers who are always happy to use your product from a sample of all your customers, what you do is you interview them to know who they are, like who they really are, to know what problems they want to solve, and then you know why they would act. So when you know who they really are, you can know their demographics, like she's a marketing manager and all that. You know what problems they want to solve. So for ICP storage, we usually break these problems into two. So you break them into their internal pains and external struggles. As I go ahead, you see how all these things comes into execute every content piece you craft with product, less storytelling. Then you equally want to interview them for why they want to act now relates to the desired transformations that they would want to have. So if Sarah, for instance, a marketing manager, wanted to use something like Clearscope, why would she want to do that? What desired transformation would she want to? Probably be because she would want to rank high on Google. Maybe that's one. It would equally be because she doesn't just want to rank high on Google, but drive business or increase pipeline. So knowing their desired transformations will help you know how you're going to present the argument in your content so that they'll actually read it and see the need to take action. So that's the summary of how to create ICP StoryScripts. As part of trying to know who they are, so you try to know what their beliefs are, because like Seth Godin always says, their prospects' beliefs was there, their worldview was there before your product. So you don't just go in and try to change their worldview. You key into their worldview and align your product's value accordingly. So once you've created your ICP StoryScript, you then go to product-led storytelling. And product-led storytelling starts with a brief. For us, we equally solve problems with the SEO-focused content briefs, where you've probably, if you're on this webinar, you've probably seen it, where you just have, say, the target keyword. You have other content pieces ranking on the SaaS, and all that. There is no real focus on who the person you're writing the content for. There's no real focus on that. And even when there is something like that, it's only marginal. You don't state why they want to read that content and all that. So we found a problem with that. So to solve it, we designed another framework I call story briefs and outline, because we don't just want to create content. We want to use storytelling that will resonate with the target ICPs and engage them to read so that we can compel them to act. So the story briefs and outline has 4 sections. The first is strategic alignment. So this is where you state your goal for the article, the target query and keyword, and then the topic cluster the content falls into. Because like a tree cannot make a forest, one content piece cannot solve all your content marketing problems. So each content piece must fall into a topic cluster. And then importantly, you state why creating this space is important. So this is an exercise we do for every piece you want to create. Before you create any content piece, why should the company even create that content piece? If the reason is just because you want to rank high on Google or drive traffic, then you shouldn't. You should be creating a content piece that has mutual benefits. It will be helpful to the target ICP and then helpful to the business. The second step is ICP StoryScript resonance. So the ICP StoryScript we created, we didn't just create it and leave it. More like when you have buyer personas, we are creating content for marketing managers, for instance. With story briefs and outline, you go to your ICP story script document, and depending on the keyword or search query your content is trying to address, you ask yourself, what pain points am I going to anchor this content on so that it will resonate with the target ICP? You ask yourself again, what journey stage would the ICP be that would make them want to read this content? That's when you first ask the question, who is the content piece for? So if you go back to the ICP story scripts concept I talked about, I showed you a sample, like a big sample of your customers. Now, when it comes to briefing the content, you want to ensure that you're briefing it for just one person, considering that only one person reads your content at a particular time. Then finally, you look at what beliefs, what pain points, and desired transformation are you going to anchor the storytelling in your content on so that it will resonate with this target ICP and be relevant to the problems they are trying to solve. Thirdly, it's when you do all these things first before you go to the stage where you start looking at SEO keywords, search queries, and also this is where you use a tool like Clearscope, for instance, and maybe plug your keyword and look where it will summarize the SERPs, and then you see people also ask questions. You can scrape that from Quora, Reddit, as the case may be. So you ensure that you get strategic alignments, brief a content piece that will resonate with your target ICP using the ICP story script concept before you even start looking at organic research and how to probably discover that content you want to create. When you've done those three parts, you then go to the outlining part. So the outlining part is essentially taking the steps from 1 to 3 to outlining the content that would align strategically with your business goal, resonate with your target ICP, and address the queries that is likely to make that target ICP discover your content from the SERPs. So I've just talked about this. So outlining relatable story is where you use the content outline, but this essentially means using the steps from the other parts to outline a content piece. Then once you've done that, we then go to the crafting a product-led storytelling content piece, which is the second step. Now, just to summarize the first step, again, a lot of steps goes into creating ICP story briefs and outline. It actually involves 9 steps when it comes to outlining them. And I'm going to show that when we go to the actual product-led storytelling content-based creation. So when it comes to crafting a product-led storytelling content base, the first and most important thing is to attract and filter your target ICP. So if we go back to Sarah's example, she clicked on the content piece, and maybe from the title, maybe it was clickbaity, as the case may be, she clicked on it, but she probably didn't read it. That's why she went back to the SERPs to search for the second content piece. So for a product-led storytelling content piece, how it's able to counter that problem is that it attracts and filter the target ICP right there on the content. How you do that first is by using a very specific value promising headline. So because you know that, for product-led storytelling, because you know that you are writing content to resonate with a very specific target ICP, you want to ensure that you're including a promise or something in your headline that will make that target ICP know that this content piece is for them. Immediately they land on your content, you want to use a story-driven intro to give them a very soft landing and make them feel like this content piece is for them. So not the generic, let's say for instance, in the case of Sarah, she was searching for how to improve email open rates. The usual thing people do, because they're trying to force in a keyword into the first 50 words of a content piece, is that they'll start with something like, are you trying to improve email open rates? Like, those are too generic and it's been overused. It doesn't just speak to anybody in particular. Instead, you can step back and use a story that resonates with you, probably where the target ICP would actually be at the journey stage that will make them want to read that content piece. And then lastly, for your content to resonate, for you to get resonance with your target ICP, you need to call them out. Like if you're writing a content piece for a marketing manager at an enterprise B2B SaaS company, if that is the person that is most likely to get the most mutual, to yield the most mutual value for your business, and by mutual value, I mean, if they read the content, if they actually read that content, the chances of them converting into a customer is high. You need to call them out. They need to come into your content and feel like, this person knows who I am. They wrote this content for me. Once you've done that, they will feel like the content resonates with them. You then go to the second part, which is to engage and show and not just tell. So, like, this is where product-led really comes in, because you go to so many content pieces and there's so much education. Like, they tell you this, they tell you that, but most of the things they tell you are things that their product can solve. And for reasons I can't explain, they don't show how their product solves those problems. So how you counter this with product-led storytelling crafting is that you use H2s and H3s to discuss specific queries or make relevant problem statements. So specific queries could be queries you discovered from your organic discovery triggers when you were briefing your content that your target ICPs are probably having, or you make problem statements that align with their beliefs or their pain points or their desired transformations. Once you've done that, you show and not just tell how your product addresses those queries or solves those problem statements you've made. So this could be GIFs, this could be product screenshots, this could be like regular screenshots of your product, as the case may be, but you weave your product into the narrative. I'm not saying just throw in your product and claim to be the best product and all that. If you're crafting a very good story that guides somebody from step 1 to step 2, within those steps, I think it just makes sense to bring in your product and show them how your product actually solves the problem the content is addressing without necessarily trying to force them or shove the product down their throats. And then in the 6th step of product-led storytelling execution, you want to nudge action. So if you engaged somebody up to this point in your content, they've gone like 70% already. Chances are the content is relevant to them. You've done the first heavy lifting of being resonant to who they are. Now you've addressed what problems the content is. You've addressed what problems. You've shown how to address what problems the content is addressing with your product. You should kind of nudge action. So there is a way we do this. It's not like buy our product or sign up now, but there is a way you can introduce CTAs within your content piece to like nudge them to take the next steps. So once you've engaged and shown, we then go to the final part where you use a relatable customer story to persuade and convert. So in this step, which is the 7th step of crafting a product-led storytelling content piece, you still use H1, H2s, and H3s as the case may be to discuss queries. But in this time, you're discussing queries where you can tie in customer success stories, because whether you like it or not, customers and prospects are more likely to believe the stories of people like them, your existing customers, more than you. So it makes sense to weave in your customer success stories into your content pieces to show them what other people like them have achieved with your product. Again, not in a braggy way or like trying to shove the product down their throat, but in a way that it's really, really helpful to them and makes them visualize the possible outcomes. At this point of the content too, you're equally trying to bring their desired transformation to bear. Because at this point, when you're trying to persuade and convert them, you're trying to make them see what they could equally achieve if they use your product to solve the problems your content piece has shown them how to solve. And then finally, you nudge conversion. I want to stress it because we go to some B2B SaaS content pieces today, and what you see is at the end, you see conclusion. And then they open up the comments for people to drop comments and then tell them to share the content and all that. Like, I'm not saying those things do not work, but as long as I am concerned, the goal of content marketing is to notch conversions. That could be like telling somebody to sign up for your product, or telling them to join your email newsletter or your own audience, whatever the case may be, so that you keep nurturing them with more content. So I don't see any reason why you should be ending your content piece and telling people to drop comments when that's not your real goal at the end of the day. I just think it's just, I don't even know what to call that. But let's proceed. So what is the goal of creating ICP story scripts and using that to guide you in crafting, like creating ICP story scripts, building story bricks and outlines, and using that to craft a product-led storytelling content piece? The goal is to transform each content piece you craft into a funnel of its own. So if you look at what I have just shown you, from trying to resonate with your target ICP by using a headline that will promise value to them, using a story-driven intro, and then calling them out so that you can resonate with them. What you're doing is that you're trying to attract and filter them. So let's say 1,000 people find your content piece. You probably don't need 1,000 people to sign up, or let me say 1,000 people are not going to sign up. But if we are sticking with Sarah, like marketing manager Sarah, for instance, you want every marketing manager that comes across your content to feel like this content is for them, because when you do that and they continue reading to where you engage and show them the problems that you're showing them how to solve with your product within the content piece, is going to be relevant. And as you're engaging and showing them, they are going down the funnel until it goes to the last phase where you persuade and show them by weaving in customer success stories to persuade and convert them. Now, this is important. Before I proceed, let me stress it again. Another thing most B2B SaaS companies do that I think they could improve on is, if you go to the typical SaaS company today, they have a directory on their site where they have all their customer success stories. So, but those success stories are not woven into their content pieces to make people who read their content visualize possible outcomes if they use their product to solve problems. So it's almost feeling like, it almost comes off like we expect people to come to our content pieces, visit our site, and then when they're ready to buy, they go back to our site, go back to our directory, find a customer success story, read it, and then convert. Like if you've not done that, like if you have not done these things I have said, I don't see any reason why you should be expecting your prospects to do it. And creating success stories and keeping them in a directory helps nobody. So you should learn how to weave them into your content so that people who are reading your content can visualize possible outcomes. Now, when you have done all this, like I like to do all this before I go over using tools like Clearscope, as the case may be, whichever other tool you're using, it doesn't matter. But when you focus on crafting content that resonates, is relevant, and gives somebody a reason to sign up, then you can throw that content into a tool like Clearscope to maybe check how it compares to others on the rank, include relevant keywords and all that, and then optimize it for organic discovery. But don't start with organic discovery, because what you do is you may end up creating content that ranks, but it's going to fall into the trap of Pogo-sticking, because it may not resonate, it may not be relevant, and it may not be compelling enough to give people a reason to want to act. So how do you measure the success of product-led storytelling? For us at Vex Studio, there are 3 things we measure, like when we are working with SaaS companies. First thing we measure are bounce rates, because the first thing we measure is bounce rates, and the reason is that people will only bounce off your content if the content is not resonant to who they are. Immediately, if you open any content piece and just like maybe this is just a repetition of something you've seen before, or it doesn't resonate with you, the first thing you do is you will bounce off. The second thing we measure is time on page, because the only way you could test if your content is relevant after being resonant is the time people spend on your content pieces. So if you have a content piece of 7 minutes, for instance, after 1 month, you should go back to that content piece and check on average, how many minutes are people spending on this content? if people are spending less than 2 minutes, for instance, you know that they are not even getting to the stage where you are showing them how your product solves the problems the content is addressing. And then finally, conversion rate. Conversion rate, in this case, is not just trial users or sales demos. For B2B sales cycles, they don't just happen. Most times, the best conversion could be getting somebody to subscribe for more content, because you know that over time, you can keep like educating them, nurturing them, and pulling them down your sales funnel. As I said, this is what we measure. Like, I can't show you clients' dashboards here, but at Vex Studio, we are always going back to measure our content pieces to see which ones people are spending much more time on. And we've come to realize that the pipeline we generate correlates with the content pieces that people spend much more time on. Then the results you want to analyze as part of measuring those success metrics is to check your subscriber growth. So if people are subscribing for your content, it means that the content is resonating and it's relevant to them. Maybe they don't want to take the next action. They are not yet ready to buy. Then again, you want to check free trials and all that. Most content pieces can drive direct subscription, especially if you're marketing a free product, a product with a freemium, with a free trial or a freemium product. The other thing is sales demos. That's if you're marketing like a product that involves like that is sales led. Now, the common pitfalls to avoid when you're executing product-led storytelling is don't write for everybody. Each content piece you create, stack all your target ICPs and ask yourself, who is most likely to yield the most value from this content piece? I'm always using the word yield the most value because it's two ways. You want the person to get so much value from reading the content. At the same time, you want the act of reading that content to contribute to your own business bottom line. If you chase two rats, you're likely not to catch anyone. So if you try to chase two people or people with different interests at the same time, you end up with a bland content that doesn't resonate with anybody at all. So one thing that we always recommend is when you want to write a content piece, go to all your ICP story scripts or all the ICP story scripts you created for all your target ICPs and ask yourself, which of them is likely to yield the most value from this content piece? That's the person you want to write that content piece for. The next thing is over optimization. And it goes back to my point that you shouldn't start with SEO and trying to throw in the keyword in the first 50 words and all that. Of course, you know that Google is getting smarter and smarter and smarter in surfacing the most helpful content. And one of the ways they tend to know that content is helpful is the time people spend reading that content piece. So do not over obsess yourself with SEO, putting the keywords here and there. First of all, focus on crafting a content piece that will resonate with target ICP that they would actually want to read. Lastly, when you're talking about storytelling, you are talking about narratives. You shouldn't force your narratives. Keep your stories natural. And stories could come from anything. When you're briefing your content piece, you know that each content piece falls into a topic cluster. Each content piece falls into a particular stage in the customer journey. All those information are nuggets for you to develop your stories. So if you're creating a content piece, for instance, for Sarah that we've used in this presentation, and she's a marketing manager, she's looking for how to improve her email open rates. Common sense will tell you that for somebody to be looking for information on email open rates, they already know something about email marketing. So going to that content piece to go and tell them what is email marketing, it's not relevant. That kind of story will not resonate with them because a marketing manager that is looking for how to improve our email open rates already has email open rates, maybe on a low scale. So all these different points helps you ensure that you're using narratives that resonate with them. And then lastly, you should show and not just tell. Don't just craft content addressing and educating and all that. Weaving your product to show and not just tell. I'm going to pause to take like some questions, and let's make this a little bit interactive as I take some questions and answers, and then I'll finalize. So I'll turn back to Bernard.
Victor, my goodness, that was a masterclass in what I feel a lot of SEO content lacks these days, right? You called out the lack of relevance, the lack of depth, just the lack of soul, if you will, right? Within content that a lot of us have produced or are reading in the search engine results. Then you outlined this whole framework and this narrative. I have a question. We have a couple questions already queued up, but my question is, what B2B companies do you see doing this very well? Like, what are some concrete examples that you've studied that you look to for inspiration? And yeah, can you share with us some of those examples and concepts?
The one that comes right off my mind is Mutiny. So I think Mutiny HQ, that's mutinyhq.com. They are a perfect example of a company that executes product-led storytelling to the letter. So from their websites to their playbooks to their blog posts and all that, and even if you dive into their growth marketing plays, everything they just try to send traffic to their content because they know that that content is resonant to who they're trying to sell to. And you wouldn't go through any of their content pieces without visualizing what you would possibly achieve if you use their product to solve your problems. So Mutiny, of course, is a very good example. And then, of course, some of the SaaS companies that have worked with us, like Cyber Sierra, like Writer Zen, which is like a competitor to Clearscope, for when they were working with us. And if you look at some of the content we crafted for them and the results it was able to achieve, like you go to the content from the headline to within the content. Another good example is Ahrefs. So on the product-led side, Ahrefs is a very good example. Where I think they fall short, and I'm not saying in my own opinion, where I think they fall short is the fact that their content misses out on the very first thing, which is they don't try to make it resonate with a very specific person. And I get it because they're trying to appeal to everybody at once. So those are just a few examples.
Yeah, fantastic. Then first question from the audience. This is from Rolf. He asks, in my experience, ghostwriting product-oriented content for B2B software as a service often leads to scope creep due to endless revision rounds, content by committee. You oftentimes have internal subject matter experts that are focused on the nuts and bolts of their product. So they push to cram all the different features inside of a piece of content. As a ghostwriter, you end up in this back and forth with every stakeholder involved before the content piece is happy. How do you navigate the nuances of appealing to different stakeholders in the B2B context?
Okay, so I'll share my own experience as a way of trying to navigate that. I think we struggled with that initially when we like say, okay, the only thing we are going to be doing now is product-led storytelling. Because for some products, like for most SaaS B2B products, so many people are handling different things, and then you want to create a content piece. So the first thing we did is to try to get alignment from the very beginning. Like, you should state it very clearly that you cannot do this work without having a very good understanding of the product. So that has become part of our onboarding process, where it's mandatory for the company you're working for. That I'm trying to answer the person that asked this question. I think you should try to make them realize the need for them to teach you the product. You can't do product-led storytelling without knowing the product like the back of your palms. So everything about the product, you should even know the product better than the people you're trying to write the content for, because those stories, for them to be natural, you have to know when you should weave them into the content. So the first thing is to demand that you're educated. And then the second thing that we do that has helped us overcome it is to actually sign up to the product like a customer. So for instance, before we work with, for us to work with any company, like as I'm talking to you right now, one of the prerequisites is that we are going to have access to your highest tiered accounts. So not because we want to use the product as maybe just for free, but we need to dip ourselves into the shoes of the people that are going to read that content, to know every possible thing they'll probably do with your product. When we do that, then we would know how to start talking about your product in a very natural way. Those are two ways I would say you would overcome that problem.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you got to know the product as well as the people that you're writing it for, right? And in that way, you can then command the respect of the different stakeholders and have the ability to navigate the politics or potential politics well. All right, we have a question from Akindeo. She or he asks, what would we say jobs to be done is in content? You brought it up earlier on as, the JTBD concept. And I think this is just a, clarifying question on, what.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that question.
You need a better question? Is that what you said?
I said, I didn't hear that question. Can you repeat it, please?
Oh, yes. The question is, what would we say jobs to be done is in content? Like, what did you mean when you brought that up?
Okay, jobs to be done means the actual things or the problems that your target ICPs wants to solve. So the jobs to be done theory, I can't remember right now from the top of my head who invented that theory. It does a great job in helping you articulate the very specific problems that your target ICPs want to solve, which is very good. So it's kind of, I think that answers the question. Jobs to be done is for you that is asking this question. When you read a content piece, what problems do you want to solve? Those are jobs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question comes from Jamie. They ask, do you have any advice on how to create an ideal customer profile if your client doesn't have any materials or in-depth research to share? I imagine that's probably common with working with earlier stage startups and companies. I see this happen with a lot of startups. I've used AI tools to help create fictional ICP profiles, but is there a better way that you recommend when helping a customer think about their ICP?
Okay, so first, I must admit that at this stage, we don't, and I would personally not advise to work with a company that has less than 3 customers. I think 3 customers is, for me, is the baseline. So if a company or a product has 3 customers, then you have everything you need to build the initial, because ICP StoryScripts is not a one-time thing. I think that's something I didn't state when I was mentioning ICP StoryScripts. When you build ICP StoryScripts and you have different columns for their beliefs, their pain points, whether it's internal or external struggles, and then their desired transformations, as you learn more about your target ICP, you're improving that document. It's a never-ending process. So in the initial stage, if they don't have a large audience, even if it's just one customer that they have, just go talk to that customer. Even if you can't talk to that customer, having one customer gives you an idea of the kind of customers they want to attract. Go and look for that person and talk to. If the company cannot help you talk to just one person that they are trying to sell their business to, I really don't know how you can help them there. I don't think there's any magic you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would even say that three is like the absolute bare minimum, right? I think three, and you're still potentially feeling around in a dark room, being like, it's, do you actually know, or did your friend just buy it because they want to support you? Anyways, yeah, I think it's tough for early stage startups, because they're oftentimes trying to figure out what the market fit is, and what their personas are. We have a
Okay, so
question. Oh, go
now
ahead.
as a follow-up to that, as a follow-up answer to that question, if a company does not have any, like a startup, because it's possible that a startup would not have any customer at all. I don't think at that point you should be writing content to try to convert people like immediately. Try to articulate the founder's point of view. Try to know why they started the product. Write that kind of content to share their narrative so that it will attract their earliest customers. I think that would be a better use of your time.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about conversions and results. This is a question that I believe comes from Amanda, and she asks, what sort of results have you or your team seen in engagement rates or conversion rates from taking this approach with your content? I think maybe I'll split it out more granularly to say a couple of the goals that you mentioned were email newsletter subscriptions or generating leads. So what's the ballpark, average conversion you expect from a product-led SEO piece to the conversion to newsletter sign up? And then, subsequently, what does that funnel look like to, drive an actual lead?
Okay, so there is no definitive answer here as with anything when it comes to marketing and all that. And I don't like to be too hard pressed with numbers, because then I would be maybe setting up a benchmark that you probably would know meet. But in our experience, because everything I'm sharing here is from my own experience, we've had instances where we create a content base, and 10 people find that content base, and then 3 people go on to sign up for a free trial. So you can do the math on that. Then we then advise the client to take that content piece and use it for ad campaigns, and it keeps generating sign-ups whenever the right people find the content piece. We've again had content pieces that does not generate anything at all. But when you look at the attribution, you notice that everybody who eventually became a customer touched that content, like they found that content in one way or another. So I don't have a direct say this content to this number conversion rates. But how we try to split this to ensure that our investment is driving the outcomes we want is, what we advise clients and what we do is we try to break our content programs into 2 buckets. So on the one hand, we are looking at content pieces that would mostly just educate our target ICPs. This would be like the top of the funnel content pieces and all that. We still within the product to show how it solves problems, but we know that people who are reading this content will probably be on the, let's say, they are problem aware, they're not ready to take the next step. The goal with those kind of content pieces is to try to nudge them to convert into subscribers. And then for that, in our own case, we've seen almost a 3% conversion rate, like on average, into our email, like subscribers and all that. We've seen, like, just to give you a ballpark example, for a client who works for 1 year, where we knew from the onset that their starting price was from like $3,000 a month. So it was an annual contract. Nobody's going to wake up one day and just buy a product of $30,000. It has a lot of buying. So from the onset, we told them that we are optimizing for email subscribers, that those email subscribers will be the ones, after they've maybe seen most of our content pieces, they'll be the ones that are likely to convert. So from the onset, we optimize for email subscribers, and that was the goal. So we're able to grow email subscribers in 1 year to about 800 subscribers. And then after a year, most of the customers came from there. So it really depends on the business and the strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the answer in a lot of SEO-based things is it depends, but I'm happy you shared your experiences with the metrics and things that you've seen. Amanda has one follow-up question, which is, you've mentioned all of this very deep resonance-driven work, right? Really understanding the individual that you're writing for instead of just this broad brush stroke of, here's a topic and everything you might want to know about it. All of that collection in terms of getting really deep into collecting, compiling the customer stories is pretty resource intensive. So how does your team scale that process? How do you think about turning, like kind of reducing the amount of effort or resources that whole customer research component takes?
Okay, so I'm gonna be very frank with this one. Like,
Please.
one of the ways we've seen great success is to encourage our clients to incentivize their customers. Like, even getting a customer to just write a one sentence of what your product did for them seems to be a very big hurdle for them to cross for reasons I cannot explain. So, and I think the answer to that question will take me back to Mutiny that I mentioned before, that I would call it like a perfect playbook for product-led storytelling execution. If you go to Mutiny, I think 70% of their content programs are playbooks. They're not really case studies, they are playbooks. If you delve into those playbooks, you notice a co-marketing activity happening there. So you notice that the person, like, they're interviewing this customer and the customer is writing a story of how they're able to maybe increase their conversion by 2%. Within that content piece, you see how the customer's product helped before you see how Mutiny's product helped. So when you create that, like when you incentivize that process and not just, hey, our product is helping you, come and tell us how it's doing that so that we can use it to get more customers. Like, there's no benefit to the customer to just give you a case study. So if there's a way to incentivize co-marketing activities where each time someone comes across that content, they'll equally learn how that customer's products comes into the picture, because it's going to drive demand for them too. That's one way to do it. Another way to incentivize this is to usually you see where they say on G2, if you give us a review, we'll give you a 20 bucks gift card and all that. I would say, if you know how you can maybe scale that up, everybody loves a free lunch. So if you can scale that up too, they'll be willing to. But I'm not gonna lie, there is no workaround about this. Like, you have to find a way to make the people you want to collect these stories for involved and invested in giving it out. And the only way we've seen success is to encourage our clients to incentivize their customers. When they do, and they give us that room for us to talk to them, then we come up with the right questions, trying to nudge them to really articulate what the product helped them solve and the outcomes they were able to achieve.
Awesome. All right, couple more questions and then we're gonna wrap this up. Austin asks, how much new content should a team be putting out on a quarterly basis? Their team has produced 65 articles in the last quarter. Feels like way too many. We want to have work to do, but we have so much existing content to update as well. And most of the stuff in the blog post just feels like kind of pretty broad, too much. What are your thoughts about the quantity of production, where should one focus their resources?
Wow. I must first of all applaud you for producing up to 60 content pieces in a single quarter, because honestly, I'm just thinking of how your team would be big to be able to do that, because for the customers we work with, we produce only, in a quarter, we produce just 12 content pieces. So using my own case, for instance, and I seriously don't recommend more than 12 content pieces in a quarter. Why I say that is, if you want to craft a product-led storytelling content piece, for instance, it involves a lot of work. Like, it's easy to just say, hey, write for just one person. But when you actually want to do that and make your content resonate with that one person, a lot of work goes into that. And then secondly, if you distribute one content well enough, I don't think you would have the need to produce as much as 60-something content pieces in a quarter, except you're just playing the classic SEO game, where more gives you the opportunity to maybe create more content around a topic, build the cluster bigger, and then rank high. As I said, if you go to Mutiny, for instance, which I would call a classic example, like a classic example, everybody on this webinar should go and emulate. They are not my clients, I don't work for them, but I'm just telling you that that's a very good example. Now, if you go there, you notice that sometimes they may not produce another playbook for another 2 months. They may produce one content piece in a full month, or sometimes twice in a month. But you know what they do? They try to convert people from their content piece into their newsletter. And then their newsletter is a classic distribution of the several content pieces they've been creating for years. So Mutiny can distribute one content piece on their newsletter 50 or 100 times, just in different formats and in different ways, because they know that their product is expensive. And I think it's about $20,000 for the list pricing tier. Nobody's going to make that decision like just reading one content piece. So they focus on crafting content that people would actually want to read, and then resonating so well that people will convert to their newsletter, and then they distribute that content in different ways to their target ICPs to cover. So I will not sit here and tell you don't produce 60 content pieces, but what I would say is, using the metrics I have shared, go back to that 60 content piece you created last quarter and ask yourself, like, you look at the data, what is the bounce rate on those content pieces? How much time do people spend on those content pieces? And how many of them led to free trials, email subscribers, and all that? Use that data to know what resonates, and then just focus on creating more of this content piece, even though it's just maybe 20 or 5 or even 1 a quarter, then distribute it better. That's what I would say.
Well said. It's about less is more, quality over quantity, and distribution. So my final question to you is that you run VEC Studio, and you clearly know a lot about converting B2B SEO content. So can you give the audience a sense of what a typical engagement looks like if they wanted to work with you to get them, the help, maybe a quick walkthrough of what the services are that you offer, kind of a range in terms of the timeline and, budget that someone can expect?
Okay, so the process of working with us, of course, starts with strategy. That's if what we do resonates and you book a call, we talk. And so the first prerequisite is that you must have at least 5 happy customers, because that gives us the basis to understand their story and tell that story in a way that will attract more of those 5 happy customers. I think that's the basis. We use that to build ICP story scripts, and all that, build your content strategy. The second thing we try to always do is try to understand how the product is different. But this is part of the whole content strategy part. Then we build topic cluster content marketing strategy. I didn't delve into that because I want to keep this webinar, excuse me, very short. But in terms of our services, we do a minimum of 7 months engagement, initial engagements, not to tie prospects in, but because if we are going to invest all that time in the first month, building out ICP StoryScript, designing your content strategy, learning your product, which most times it takes us 2 weeks for maybe me, the strategist and the storyteller, to go in and use probably everything that the product does, study the product. We want to be sure that we are both committed to making this work. So we build it. So the minimum is 7 months, and then our starting price is $7,000, sorry, excuse me, a month. So that $7,000 covers for content strategy design, crafting at least 4 content pieces a month, designing a way to distribute that content, giving you excerpt. Like I said in the introduction of this webinar, we are very heavy into design. Like, design is kind of the core of product-led storytelling. So we try to visualize so many things, create GIFs of your products, screenshots, and everything that will make sure that the content is really, really actionable.
Awesome. Well, you heard it, 7 months, Victor, he loves prioritizing the quality work, and I agree. Quality will trump quantity. And again, thank you so much, Victor, for teaching us all of your expertise surrounding product-led storytelling with the story scripts, the templates, the best practices that you drove home. I took a lot of notes while you were talking, and I think that SEO content needs to change. It needs to evolve. It needs to engage and show and persuade and convert, and that's done through stories and value promising ideas. So again, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, and we hope to see the audience members in another upcoming webinar.